Good morning and welcome to today's discussion on clean design in public spaces, hosted by me, Sophie Harper, editor of Space magazine. We'll be discussing design in public spaces, how attitudes to the environments in which we congregate and socialise have changed, and explore the ways in which design can help to address the new social norms. On the panel, I'm pleased to introduce Dexter Moren, partner at Dexter Moren Associates, Afroditi Krassa, founder of Aphrodite Krassa, and Damien Perrot, Senior Vice President, Design Solutions for Accor. Following the panel discussion, there will be a live Q&A between 10:30 and 10:40 a.m. on Thursday, 13th of August. Thank you guys for joining me today. I thought we could start by looking at a social favourite, bars and restaurants. So how can design be used as a driving force to reassure customers back to bars and restaurants without sort of cutting capacity and therefore revenue in half? Aphroditi, I know you do a lot of bar and restaurant work. Would you like to go first?
I wouldn't mind at all. I knew this is coming my way. I kind of expected it, so that's absolutely fine. Firstly, I think it's a really interesting time for design. It's obviously a massive challenge for us designers to think of things given the circumstances, but at the same time, I think it's a massive opportunity for design to step up. And design to me has always been fundamentally about problem solving. I'm a trained product designer. I'm not an architect or an interior designer. So, you know, when you design, the first thing they teach you is all about solving problems. And I'm glad that we don't have to deal with the shallow way of looking at design, which is just about making things, which is part of our job. But we now have to really solve problems, which are quite fundamental, and help our clients survive what is a very, very difficult time ahead for them. So I'm glad that our clients are now coming to us, really challenging us on how we can help with our creative thinking to help them survive through this, but also how can we, the customers, feel reassured and happy and engage with the environment that they provide. So I feel that this is a real opportunity for us designers to step up and provide with solutions that allow for revenue streams to be advantage of. So I might not be answering your question direct, but at the same time, I don't think we should just look at cutting capacity, but creating other options for revenue streams for our clients. So it doesn't just become about bums on seats, which is a very classic restaurateur's expressions. How many bums on seats can we get? We all globally have to face less seats, therefore less bums, but how can we create revenue streams in other ways and be creative around it? So for us, our job is not just to answer to a brief and say, okay, we'll go and design this and do that, but to work with a client. So I'll give you a good example. We're working currently with Gordon Ramsay doing a project out in Los Angeles in a very heavily office. Can you still hear me, or is the connection? Yeah, can you all hear me? Great. In a very heavily office populated, and 6 months ago, we would have thought that we would have had a massive revenue stream from office workers coming in and buying breakfast and buying coffee on the way to their offices. That's not the case anymore, and might not be the case for the foreseeable future. It might never be the case again. So we've now been asked to go back onto the drawing board and literally other ideas to how do we use the space to still bring them the same revenue that they were planning ahead of taking the space. So we need to think of what else would customers need post-COVID, or whilst they're not occupying these offices, in order for our client to be able to survive this crisis, which is a crisis. So that's one task as designers we have to look at. But secondly, when customers come, if we don't have the same capacity, if the kitchen is less busy, if the restaurant itself is less busy, if it's more empty, how do we provide an excellent experience, an experience that would make them want to come again and again of the health concerns that they might have? Because ultimately, if people are very concerned over health issues, they would not visit a restaurant. But if you can find ways to reassure them and they have a great time and it becomes an escape, a mental escape, a well-being escape from everything that's going on in their lives, then they will surely come back. So you need to provide solutions, not only reassure them that things are maintained clean and you know, the basics are taken care of, but psychologically that they're still having a fantastic experience, you know, they're still listening to great music, trying great food, having great service, something that really provides a respite from what is more stressful lifestyle that we're all having now in comparison to before. You know, we're all isolated, working from home, a lot of people in very antisocial environments, and going out to a restaurant is still very much a respite from all of this and a social experience. So we still need to provide that. So we're looking from basic things as in new technologies when it comes to materials, new materials that deal better with cleaning, UV lights that help in certain ways provide a slightly more bacteria and virus-free environment, new spatial arrangements that give more space between tables without losing the ambience and the liveliness of a busy restaurant, new acoustic solutions that perhaps kind of exaggerate the sound of a more empty restaurant, because there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than walking into an empty restaurant or bar and literally hearing your own voice because the place is so echoey and empty. So sound becomes much more important all of a sudden. We've also got restrictions globally onto sound levels now, the sound of, you know, how loud your music is, because staff have to shout louder, and this is obviously not good for COVID. So we need to consider the whole experience under these new circumstances and provide even more than before a psychological full spectrum of happiness for people to be able to come back.
It's really interesting. Damien, is this the sort of thing that you guys are looking at as well with Accor hotels? Are you looking at encouraging guests back by reassuring them in similar ways to how Afroditi has pointed out?
Yeah, first of all, of course, there is this period right now. I think we have really living during the crisis. So during the crisis, what we've launched, we've launched let's say a protocol in order being able to welcome our guests, but also our employees, and that everyone are really safe when they are in our environment. So that's really what needs to be done. And in order to reassure them, we also made a partnership with Bureau Veritas in order being able to be audited and really to certify our spaces. But that's one thing for this period of time. But when we are talking about how could we still perform, first of all, you need to know that people are not coming in restaurants just to eat. You know, when they are coming in a restaurant, yeah, it is in order to meet other people, to be together, to live a moment, and not only eating something. So what is very important, and what we realize also, is that all the restaurants we have that has been really well designed and providing a great experience, today they are full. In Paris, Berlin, they are working very well. And that's true that mainly our lifestyle brand perform much more than the other one during that period of time, because the one who would like to go in a restaurant, they just choose the best one, the one with the best atmosphere, the best ambience, etc. And that will never change. So that's something we need to continue, not to be too much afraid about the situation today, but continue bringing all the creativity in order to create the experience, which is a combination of the organization of the space, the look and feel, and also what you have in the plate. So that's really important. On top of that, you need to find other solutions, meaning, okay, we're gonna have less people in the restaurants because of this social distancing, etc., during that period. So what do we do when you do not come in the restaurant for lunch? Could we do something else in the morning or in the afternoon? Could we maybe use those space for another service? Could be co-working, for example. And so there is lots of other ideas. And with our hotel, for example, we partner with Wojo, which is another brand we have with Bouygues, to provide that kind of services. So that's another example. And what is very good with designers and with the design is the creativity always come. More you have constraints, more there is creativity in a way. And so, as you said, Afroditi, which is very important, is take the designer as the really beginning of your problem, and then the design process will be that not only choose the right color that's going to create the experience, but how could we find other solutions, open the solutions. It's really what we are doing, and we do so work a lot with designers in order to get new ideas and test those ideas, implement those ideas, etc. The other thing which is very important is that for hotel, before we used to design restaurants in order to provide the services for the people who travel, and today we are completely changing and make our hotels welcoming people who live around the hotel. And it is something that changed completely the design, the architecture as well, because we need to have more transparency, more porosity between outside and inside, and it is true also inside. But voilà, going to be short.
Thank you. Dexter, have you come across more want for changes in sort of restaurant and bar space when you're given briefs for new projects?
Yeah, I mean, right now we produced a document, which I jokingly refer to as duct tape or design, because we're just seeing duct tape everywhere on every surface, telling people where they go, what they go, and I think there's a design aspect that can be brought into play. And if you get down to the basics, it's that question of social distancing, and it's a question of being nervous about touching something that somebody else may have touched. So I think the one thing that is interesting, in whatever form, you've got to create some more barriers within a food and beverage space. How do you do that? Where are you going to gain space? Well, you're going to gain space immediately because the buffet is dead. So any space that was before a buffet is gone. And there's usually quite a bit of space around there, so you can immediately galvanize that space. And you obviously got to look at some forms of screening, which is going to make people feel comfortable. The sad thing I've noticed in restaurants is that there's a proliferation of perspex everywhere, and we got to a point where we were losing plastics, and everyone was getting more natural. But actually, sadly, that's where it's going. But there are many ways of making screens. I mean, we are busy almost finishing a project in London, which is the first Western in London, and their concept for that brand. I'm sorry, it's not Accor, Damien, but it's biophilic design. And ironically enough, it's a very contemporary design, very spare, open sort of space, and it's falling directly into the right place because those elaborate designs with lots of artifacts and everything are the sort of things that are being cleared out, and we're getting sort of more clean space. But when it comes to screening, you can use plant screening, it works quite well, or you can use other forms of material. And I'm interested to see, there was some study done by the New England Journal of Medicine. Now, admittedly, I think a lot of this study came from SARS, but they've sort of rolled it into COVID in terms of materials that keep a virus on their surface for longer periods of time. And it's amazing to me that paper is the best material because it only stays on paper evidently for 3 hours. So if you think of classic Japanese paper screens, this is where we might want to look for influences in terms of design. If you look then at metals, something like copper has only 4 hours for a virus to remain active, according to the study by the New England Journal of Medicine, whereas something like stainless steel or plastic is 3 days. So it immediately gives an idea of the kind of materials you should use. Glass is one of the worst, 4 days. So this starts to suggest the sort of materials that you should possibly be directed towards in terms of assisting and creating screens. However, we're in the big advantage at the moment in time is we're all going into summer. So fortunately, we can move everybody outside, and we're less of a concern. But the document we provided to try and assist our clients thinking forward is really looking towards, how do we come back indoors as that summer ends, and how do we help to create an environment where people are comfortable. And it's not just the guests, it's also the team that are serving those guests. So, you've got to think of front of house and back of house in equal measure. And how do you do the social distancing, and how do you do this limiting of touching? And I think that's, there's, as Afroditi said, there's a lot of, we're problem solvers. That's what designers are about. And from these problems, we're going to find solutions. I mean, at the Vintry and Mercer Hotel, which is a little boutique hotel in the city of London, we've got igloos, dining igloos, which in fact were originally put for the outside, but hey, you can bring them indoors, and you can create little environments where 6 people can sit around a table and be completely isolated from those around. So I think there are many exciting design opportunities at play.
It'd be interesting to see how different spaces are used. I think as Damien mentioned, sort of having more mixed use in what we would typically think of as just a restaurant or just a bar. And I wonder actually if the same sort of applies to the stereotypical lobby area in a hotel, because that's typically where a lot of people congregate or meet up or socialise. So do you think that we'd need to be looking at different ways to design a hotel lobby, or do you think a hotel lobby could be used in a mixed use sort of way? Do you think there are other...
If I can interject for a minute, excuse fellow panelists, but I mean, Accor have been really at the forefront of that changing concept of the lobby. The lobby for many years was a sort of like a furniture warehouse. It had a whole bunch of empty sofas and nothing happened in there. And Damien's exactly right in saying that the whole concept has been to attract locals back into the lobby and make it an exciting interactive place. Quite how you do that and socially distance is probably a bit of a challenge. But again, we get back to the concept of how do you make screens and things like that. But I mean, before COVID-19, I mean, lobbies, if you go to some of the Hoxtons and people like that, I mean, you come in, you can't find a reception. It's actually co-working, co-eating, active, lively space. And that's a great contribution to the high street for hotels and a big asset, because they're actually the lively part. And the benefit of a hotel, obviously, is that it stays open 24 hours. So it gives you a huge opportunity. And I know Accor chairman has spoken about how the hotels can interface with local retailers, taking the flowers when the flower shop closes, or dealing with the dry cleaning and all those sort of things, which is fantastic. And I think those things can still happen, but what we've got to worry about is just that sort of social distancing. Sorry, anyway, I'll pass it to the others to answer.
It would be great to hear your thoughts, actually, Damien. As Dexter pointed out, Accor have sort of championed the mixed.
It's a big evolution. What I'm saying most of the time is there is not an after COVID. COVID, it's a crisis, and it's just an accelerator of change that are already engaged. So it will help us to accelerate what we are creating. The new technology helps a lot to design space differently. For example, we don't need any more reception, because now we can go straight to the room with our mobile phone. And so we don't need to check in and check out. Before, we used to design spaces depending on functionality. So in hotel, it was very true. Here, this is the lobby. Here, this is the reception. We have the children corner. We have the restaurant. And depending on what you need to do, you need to go in the specific space. Not what we are doing is more designing a space with different atmosphere in order to have a let's say, a cozy atmosphere there, another atmosphere which is more busy, etc., etc. And then depending on with who you are, what you want to do, and depending on your mood, and you're going to choose the space you prefer. But it's in one space you could discover different type of atmosphere, and you are completely free. You can eat, work, play, meet everywhere, and that's really the new way of designing hotels. But it's true also at home. At home, you don't have anymore the kitchen, the dining room, etc. You are not able to afford all the square meter in center of London or in Paris. So you have, when you go in an apartment today, you have this huge space with a combination of kitchen, dining room, living room, and all the kids are playing around. So that's exactly what we are creating, and we are welcoming everyone, meaning that if the local come in this hotel because they find here the place they need in order to do what they need to do, then they're going to meet the people who travel. And when we say most of the time, oh, people want to feel local, they don't want really to feel this heritage atmosphere from Morocco or from France or whatever. When they want to meet the locals, they want to meet the people, and that's really what they need. And so if you design a space for local, then local will come, and then the people who come from different countries, they're going to meet also those people. So that's a big change in our industry and globally, I think, in the architecture and the design.
It is very much about creating an experience for guests, isn't it?
Creating experience with an S, because it's all about the connection also with what you want to live as well. So there is this personalization, and you can't personalize the space depending on each guest. But in one place, you will be able to live different experience, and that's where it's much more difficult for the designer, but we have much more fun when we create a new space together.
But I think if I may add to sorry, if you don't mind, if I may add, it is definitely an accelerated change. We're not seeing something that we didn't know was coming. It's just becoming faster and faster. I agree 100% with that. But we also need to look at the wider context beyond the lobby and beyond the hotel. And we need to look at the context where these establishments sit. And the biggest shift will be the city itself. So if we're talking about a hotel lobby in an urban city center, it's a completely different scenario to a resort on a Greek island. The change between the city and the Greek island, the city will change far more dramatically post-COVID than any other place. The biggest, to me, obvious shift is the way we work. Work patterns will change dramatically. We're talking about huge international companies such as Google telling their employees that they will not go back to any of their offices internationally until the end of 2021. And Facebook saying that this will be an indefinite scenario and that they will not require any of their staff to go back. Globally, beyond 21, we're talking about huge companies that occupy massive office spaces across every continent in beyond believable square footage. Just in Zurich alone, Google has got 5 massive offices, which are sitting now empty. The seismic change of that, of the way we work, will ultimately change city patterns and the way we build cities and the way cities behave. And again, this is not something new. I remember I went to a Savills talk about 4 years ago at the University of Oxford, which was predicting that the city will go through a phase 3, which is going to happen in the next 10 years, where there's no city center anymore. It becomes just an administrator center or a place where you go for fun or for tourist attractions, and you have multiple centers outside the city on a ring, and people congregate in these smaller centers and work from there and live there. And this is already happening, and COVID is becoming an accelerator. So if I was Accor, I would, and I had a lot of hotels in city centers, I would be questioning if people don't even come to the city center because they're not traveling or because they don't work anymore in these, what can I do to activate my spaces? And you really need to think beyond design and physical design and, you know, beyond choices of furniture and lights and environments. You really need to think of activation and creating real reasons for people to be moving into the city centers for some very specific experience which they cannot get anywhere else. And I think, to me, this is really what will change dramatically the lobby design, even beyond to what we're seeing. Because yes, the Ace Hotel has done extremely well by youngsters sitting there with a laptop working. But if these people are not even coming to the city center where they're based, you know, if they're not going to Shoreditch or the Flatiron area in New York, what do they need to do to bring these people in? What do they need to create in terms of experiences and activation to get these people traveling again? And the same really applies to people who are traveling. You know, what can I do to bring travelers in, but also the locals, because there might not be the amount of footfall that was the kind of low-hanging fruit for hoteliers for many, many years. They had a great hotel location, offices around. The low-hanging fruit was, let's put F&B everywhere and try to sell as much F&B in the last 10 years. But what do we do beyond that in the future? Because, you know, there will be less and less of this footfall in a city center. And I think that will go beyond COVID, in my opinion.
I think you're right. I think it's really interesting to see and work out how hotel space might change. And I think, as you've mentioned, Afroditi and Damien as well, co-working spaces are surely going to be utilised so much more by hotels as a feasible option for people who want to work in the city but don't have a need to go into an office. So do you think that with things like that and the way that we're using technology now, perhaps hotel design will cater more for that and will include more digital offerings or more sort of spaces that are geared up for people to use public spaces in hotels as meeting rooms, workspaces, that sort of thing?
Well, I'd go further than that. I think there's an opportunity, and we're looking at projects at the moment where that bedroom that is unoccupied during the day is a perfect private office. And repurposed, it will work very well. And somebody who's working late can maybe stay on in the evening. Otherwise, you can rent that room, you know, a bit like red light district rooms. You can rent it for the daytime for working, and then the evening for somebody sleeping over. Admittedly, you've got to have a very good cleaning crew that can come in and turn it around at the end of the day. But I think there's a lot of people that want that don't necessarily want to take up office space in the city, but want to come in for maybe meetings or whatever the case may be, and don't want to necessarily be in a large group of people, want a little bit of privacy. I mean, I was interested, I've been kind of starting to migrate back to my own office, and I was there yesterday. There was a couple of us who got so used to making Zoom calls and meetings. We were both doing the same, and the acoustics was a nightmare. So you've got to think about that, and somebody could, you know, take that bedroom, and you could repurpose it and design it so that it could be a private meeting room. Because I think one of the biggest problems is going to be what we do with the big meeting rooms, because the amount of business travel, I think, and business take-up on hotels is probably going to be worse than the leisure sector initially, because people have got so used to this kind of communication, they don't have to get on a plane. I mean, I used to fly everywhere. You know, I don't need to now. I mean, you know, it's amazing. You can monitor projects from miles away. You know, I see Aphroditi's working on stuff in America out of Greece. She doesn't need to get on a plane. You know, and that's changing.
Although I would love to get on a plane. To be honest, give me a ticket, I'll go to LA any moment.
But that perception of having to get on a plane to go and see a site or something, people have just realized that it isn't absolutely essential. You can actually do it quite well digitally, and that's going to, I think, affect business travel much more than it is going to be leisure. People still want to travel. They want to go to cities or go to resorts or whatever the case may be, because they want to relax. But I think a lot of that necessity of going somewhere for a meeting has been sort of taken away with what we've learned in this COVID, and that's going to impact, I think, in my mind, hotels more than anything.
Perhaps, but again, I suppose that brings it back to opening up hotel spaces that appeal more to local customers, so that local people, they can use the space, work in the space, and not have to travel. Is that something, Damien, you think we'll see happen more in Accor hotels?
For sure. I mean, there is a huge change that already started before COVID, and COVID will help, let's say, accelerate this trend. But it's not only let's say a change for our client. There is also a big change for the companies themselves, because they need to rethink the way they work with their employees, and then we are here to imagine new solution for them. If I take the example in Brazil, in all our hotels, we completely transform the rooms into office, like exactly what you said, and like that we scale it with I mean, more than 200 hotels had one floor dedicated for private office, and we can do that easily to test that, because I mean, the hotels are not full today, so it's easy without really creating a new design in order to transform the room during the day or during the night. I mean, we just transform completely the room into office room. We just remove the bed and put the desk and coffee machine and a printer, etc. And so we test that new services. It works. It's not yet a big demand, because the company still got their offices today, and so the transformation is not happening yet. What I would like to say, which is for me very important, is of course there is a lot of things we need to imagine, and I can see that we're going to have lots of creativity. But I'm very convinced that people will travel again. You know, Accor, we have the chance having hotels in all countries, and it is the first time that we have a global crisis. But every year we have a crisis somewhere in a country, be it another disease, or another terrorism, or war, or etc., etc. So we have, and we live those kind of crises everywhere all the time, and then after, life come back. Because what I'm saying most of the time is, you know, love is everything, and is stronger than everything. And if you leave the confinement during 2 months, everyone very scared. My wife doing nightmares, saying, "I'm afraid for my kids, for my mother, etc., etc." After 2 months, the confinement in Paris, everyone in the streets, just like nothing happened. It's crazy. I mean, because people, I mean, we will never live against four walls, because life, it's life. Life, it's love. Life, it's fun. Life, it's all about that. And a business, I mean, Dexter, Afroditi, I'm very happy to meet you here. But I need to meet you. I need to touch you. Yes. I need to have this real meeting with you. And that will never change. And the first thing that I want to do is to travel again. My wife, she was very afraid, and she asked me to book the flight to go to New York for in October. And she was so afraid. And now she just wants to travel again with the family, because crisis is very important to think, to explore, etc. But believe me, love will never change. It will be always there, and I strongly believe that all of us will travel again, and as soon as we'll be able to do that, we'll do it again. Sure, we've learned a lot, and we will use maybe more the digital tools that we are using today. If we are integrating the digital in our hotels, it's happening already, trying to have a specific room in order to do that digital conference, even in 3D, etc. So we are doing those things. But if people come in hotels, is to meet other people, and without digital. So we don't know the future, but I strongly believe that that the future will be better than staying against four walls.
I completely agree. I completely agree. What a lovely sentiment to end the panel on. I'm afraid we've run out of time. So it's gone so quickly, but thank you so much to all three of you for joining me today to discuss the different challenges we're facing with cleaner design in public spaces at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Lovely
Thank you
to
very
meet
much.
you.
Yeah.
And truly a wonderful message to finish on, Damien. I couldn't agree more. If I could go and meet my clients physically tomorrow, I would. I think that's will never be replaced.
Great.
And I hope I will meet you all of you very soon. And
We will meet again.
I will go in London. I will make sure that I visit the agency, and I will feel your agency, your people, your staff, see the way how you work. That's very important to me.
We look forward to that, I'm sure.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Obviously, this is an expansive topic which we could talk for hours about. So opening up the discussion to our viewers, we're going to look at some questions from the audience. Unfortunately, Afroditi and Damien can't be with us for this part of the session. So Dexter, it's all down to you. Let's ask first, can you see concepts and themes for these environments being driven by the best materials to use for screens within these spaces? So I think perhaps asking a bit about the paper screens you were talking about.
Yes, the New England Journal of Medicine, I think they did the study originally with SARS, but they've come up with analysis of various materials and their retention time with viruses on the surface. And things like paper and copper perform best. Things like glass, plastics, stainless steel, ironically enough, perform far better, far less well. I think the retention time on those last three is about 3 to 4 days, whereas paper and copper, it's 3 to 4 hours. So I think choice of material is going to be quite important.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see something other than perspex and plastic being used.
I think sorry, Sophie, to interrupt. I think the one sad resultant of this COVID-19 has been the proliferation of single-use plastics in bottles all over the place. That, you know, lots of hospitality specialists and companies had eliminated. So that's a rather sad return.
It's a shame. Do you think we'll get away from the single-use plastic again with time?
Well, hopefully. I mean, we've collaborated with Imagine Lighting to develop a sanitizer that can fit on the wall. That's a permanent fitting. That's a top-up. And I think that it will be one of many that I'm sure will be available as people become, you know, really obsessed with hygiene and want to clean hands from touching everything. So we've got to be able to install devices and equipment that doesn't need to be just thousands of plastic bottles of liquid.
Yeah, hopefully. And okay, going back to more questions. Is the COVID effect really here to stay? Considering the lead time for hotels and restaurants, might not the public revert to old habits post-vaccine?
I think we'd all like to revert to old habits, but I honestly, personally don't see this disappearing that fast. I mean, we're all hopeful that there'll be some cure for this virus, but I mean, I am informed that viruses are quite difficult to cure fully, and I think that as all of us have experienced, we're now obsessed with hygiene, and we're obsessed with reasonable distancing. We're as much as possible trying to avoid walking around with masks all the time, although that's an interim phase. But I do think that the question of distance and screening and hygiene are things that we will carry forward, irrespective of whether we get a cure or not.
I think you're right. I think it would be so drummed into us, even past the point of finding a vaccine, that it will be second nature, won't it, to steer clear from other people and
it feels uncomfortable. You know, you're standing in a queue for something and somebody barges in right next to you and you feel uncomfortable immediately. It's like you've got a new social space you want.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, another question from the audience. So how do you think we can maintain atmosphere and buzz with social distancing in play? Or do we have to accept that it will never be the same?
Well, if you're looking for a sort of a nightclub rave experience, I don't think it will ever be the same. But I mean, it's up to us designers to create new spaces or adapt existing spaces to suit the sort of social distancing that we're all comfortable with. Obviously, in dining areas where we were normally quite close together, creating screens, which could be biophilic in the way of planting, or it could be using the materials and the ones that retain less time or the virus on the surface. Alternatively, you've got people walking around cleaning a huge amount. I mean, I'm staying at the moment at the Birch, which is a new opening in North London, and there are people walking around perpetually wiping surfaces. So you've got a new allocation of staff members. But I think within restaurants, you know, we can create quite nice screened booths, even igloo shapes. I mean, obviously it's summer right now, so there's the opportunity of spreading out onto the pavement and gardens and things like that. But I think it would be something that we'll probably carry forward, and making clean design, all the sort of bric-a-brac and, you know, books in libraries and rooms and vases and things are just going to have to probably either disappear or become obsessive cleaning regimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, perhaps it's an opportunity even to look at different ways of designing spaces and creating that sort of atmosphere. I imagine a lot of atmosphere sort of can be created by clever lighting and, you know, bringing people together without making them feel they're on top of each other or unsafe.
I absolutely agree with you. It's a challenge for all in the design industry, but it's an achievable challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, what else have we got from the audience? How would you approach the incorporating non-invasive technology within modern public spaces to include voice-activated assistants post-COVID?
Well, I think, you know, there are lots of devices that we have these days that are voice activated. I think that there's a place there, but there's still also a place for speaking directly to somebody, even if you're not standing as close as you used to. And I don't think that hospitality is entirely going to become mechanical, voice activated. I think people are still the lifeblood of the hospitality industry. I don't think we're going to replace them with machines quite yet.
No, absolutely. I think as Damien was talking about, people want to be with people. People are drawn to each other and, you know, love to be around people. And in a hospitality setting, it's kind of what it's all about, isn't it? So
exactly. You may be sitting a little bit further apart than you may have before, but it's still that individual communication that's important.
Exactly. Okay, I think just maybe a couple more questions from the audience. So, do you think these changes in the way we approach the design of public spaces will persist in the long term?
I think so. I mean, I think we've just changed our whole life setting, and I mean, some years ago, I recall being very ill at a resort because, you know, the touching of implements at a buffet is a great way of spreading somebody's virus to somebody else. And I think, you know, things like the buffet, be it breakfast, be it lunch, be it dinner, is gone. It's furloughed forever. And so there are some major changes that we will carry forward. And I don't think people will change their desire for hygiene that was probably less than normal before, and I don't think people will change quickly. That just that concern of being too close to people that you know, from a social distancing aspect.
Absolutely. And then just, I suppose, one last question. What do you think hoteliers should look at first when designing spaces post-COVID?
Well, that's a long question. Well, I mean, there are a lot of things. I mean, we've put together an initiative as a company to try and help some of our clients in terms of how to adapt spaces. We call it design versus duct tape, because it seems to me there's plastic tape everywhere, and actually you can deal with a lot of those things in a more interesting and design way. You can even deal with tape on floor in a more design way, and a bit of humor, introducing a little bit of chat by the way that you do your signage. So these are important things, and I think we seem to be seeing a return in the leisure sector, particularly as a lockdown, and there's a lot of people in the UK having staycations, not leaving the island, and that has spurred a certain popularity of accommodation options across the country, which has been a boost for the summer. As we move into post-holiday season, it's going to be perhaps more of a challenge, and I think our use of things like Zoom and meetings, team meetings and things like that has changed the way that we feel it necessary to have personal contact for every meeting and every occasion. And I think that affects the business side of hotels quite dramatically in the sense of the use of meeting space. On the other hand, I think there's a real opportunity for hotels to maybe repurpose some of that space into a private workspace. Where I'm staying at the moment, there's quite a few people working from this location. They don't necessarily want to work from home. They don't necessarily want to go to the corporate offices anymore, but they want to work somewhere where they feel they've got a little bit of break from their domestic life. And hotels can provide fantastic facilities like that. I mean, there's also the opportunity for repurposing bedrooms as on a daily basis, so that people can have a private office. The design obviously has to change, that it has a desk orientation, and then maybe after 5 o'clock in the evening, the cleaning team can come in, sanitize it all, and it can be an overnight stay. Or maybe the person's worked a little bit longer than they wanted to and will stay again. So I think hotels are going to have to be flexible. There are all sorts of positive opportunities, but definitely different.
Perfect. Yep, absolutely think you're right. I've just been told we're out of time, I'm afraid. So we'll have to finish there.
Thank you, Sophie.
Dexter, thank you so much. It's been a real insight. So thank you. And thank you to everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.